Same old man.
Here's Johnny.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
So serious.
Roll out.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Welcome to this podcast review for January 19th, 2026. I am JD Duran. I am co-host this week as Brendan is out and about and partaking in whatever 2026 shenanigans that he is doing. However, I am not alone in this. I'm very excited as we turn the page, at least with us here at In Session Film. We're always a few weeks late here, but we are turning the page to 2026 with our first review this week. And I am joined by the great Megan Kearns to break it all down. Megan, welcome back to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yes.
I love being here.
I'm glad to have you here for this review for one. I'm very excited to talk about this with you. But also, I'm glad that we get a chance to talk here just so I can face-to-face thank you for holding down the fort with some reviews during the holiday season, during award season. As we wrapped up our 2025 campaign, Megan hosted a few reviews for us. And thanks for doing that. Really do appreciate you.
You're so welcome. It was my pleasure. I had a lot of fun. It was great. So happy to help.
Absolutely. And not to get too far ahead, but as some of you may know, my co-host Brendan, who is not here because he's partaking in shenanigans, his wife is very, very pregnant. So later on this year, he's going to be stepping away. And maybe, just maybe, you might see Megan's lovely face a little bit more around here.
Just maybe.
Very exciting. That's just a little tease, a little foreshadowing. And I always love getting to have these conversations with you. So we are, of course, here to talk about 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Boy, do I have thoughts on this one. However, before we get to the movie, I have two questions that I need to ask you. But first, let's start here. This film is, of course, directed by Nia DaCosta. And I'm curious, what are your feelings about Nia DaCosta as a filmmaker?
I think she's amazing. I think she's incredible. She has, in 8 years, she has 5 films, and they are varied. They are compelling. They are tightly crafted.
Mm-hmm.
And Little Woods is the only one I'm ashamed to say I haven't seen all the way through. I know. No, I'm so glad to hear you say that, but I know it's been on my list for such a long, long time. And I'm a huge Tessa Thompson fan too. So it's like, I don't know why I haven't seen it yet. I need to rectify that. But I absolutely adore Hedda. That was one of my favorite films of last year. Absolutely incredible. Blew me away. Such a great adaptation of an Ibsen play. And I love the Marvels. I think that is incredibly fun and delightful and just a burst of joy. And I think Candyman was really thoughtful, and I just love her. I love how she can do her own original work. She is great at stepping into existing franchises. She has very clearly her own vision and her own voice. And I just she works in different genres. I just love her. I think she's incredible. So this was one of my most anticipated of the year. So I'm very excited to talk about it too.
Yeah, I am a fan of Nia DaCosta as well. Little Woods, I think, is a nice little debut. Really liked that film quite a bit. Candyman, I had some issues with it, but I agree. It was a thoughtful movie that was a nice little surprise in 2021. I think that's when that film came out, or 2020. It was around there. Either way, I enjoyed that one more than I anticipated I would. The Marvels is also really good. I mean, it's hampered a little bit in that Marvel way where Marvel can't get out of its own way.
Yeah,
times.
Unfortunately.
But there is a great little energy to that film, and I love the dynamic of its central characters. There's so much fun to be had with that movie. And I agree about Hedda. It is electric. It is fan-freaking-tastic. Had one of the best actress performances of last year, unfortunately.
Yes.
Tessa Thompson's not going to be Oscar nominated, but I do think she should be in the conversation. But Best Actress, to be fair, is just it's nightmare fuel. I don't even know how you begin to dwindle that down to 5.
Oh
There
my
are
God, it's
legitimately
stacked.
15 performances you could choose from.
Yes.
And I don't think anyone would bat an eye. So, yeah, good luck trying to narrow that down. But she is really, really good. As a film altogether, I thought was really, really great. And now here she is with 28 years later. And I guess that leads to the next question I have. This is an important one. What are your thoughts on Danny Boyle's 28 years later from just last year, a few months ago, not even a year ago?
I know, so soon. I like it. I think it is different. I think it different than its predecessors. I think it is. I don't want to say different for a horror film because I think that I've read that, I've seen people say that, and I think that kind of denigrates. I don't think they mean to, but I think it denigrates the horror genre in the sense that there are so many thoughtful, emotional, existential horror films. And this is definitely one of those. But I like that I think it subverted expectations, and it became, instead of the propulsive, thrilling, adrenaline fueled, intense ride that the first two were, I think it does something really fascinating with looking at humanity and existentialism and the meaning of art and the power of art and the power of memory, and is memory important, and what does it mean to pass things along generationally and for society and collective memory. Like, I think it's asking all of these really fascinating questions that are really intriguing, and I love that. I love that it went in such a different direction. I wish though because for me the most compelling part is the last like 30 minutes. I wish more of the film had been that, because it was so beautiful and different. And so, but I really like it. I think it's a great film.
Yeah. So I want to spend a little bit of time here. Forgive me, because this will play into my thoughts on the Bone Temple, and forgive me for those that just listened to our In-Session Film Awards that we released last week. This will be a little redundant, but for anyone that missed that award show, 28 years later was my number 2 movie of the year of 2025. I think it's a full-blown masterpiece. I think it is Danny Boyle's best film by a long shot. I don't even think it's particularly close. And I think it's one of the best zombie horror films that we've gotten in a really long time. And there's been some really good ones. And I think what I love about it is that, one, it is impeccably crafted. That film, I should say, should be easily in the field for best cinematography. Like, it shouldn't even be a debate. The fact that it wasn't even shortlisted makes me want to take members of the Academy that makes those choices and give them all CAT scans, because I think there's something wrong with their brains. I don't know how you watch that film and go, nope, shouldn't be shortlisted for best cinematography. No idea how anyone comes to that conclusion. But I do think it is incredible in terms of its craftsmanship and in terms of what you would expect out of Danny Boyle aesthetically. I think visually it's audacious, it's weird, it's gross, it's evocative, it's really, really incredible. But I also think that it's Boyle's most arresting film emotionally and thematically for the reasons you're talking about there. I deeply love the juxtaposition we get with Spike in that film, which is why I think the first 30 minutes are vital to that movie, because it sets up this idea of him having to go into the woods to become a man by slaying a zombie, which is in direct contrast to an action he takes to save his mother by taking her into the woods. That juxtaposition, I think, is really incredible, because obviously that choice isn't rooted in masculinity or how well he shoots the bow, but rather his willingness to be vulnerable, to do whatever it takes to save your family. And how that builds upon itself in the second act with the relationship between a mother and a son. We also get that zombie pregnant sequence, which I don't think I've ever seen before in a zombie film, and I think is vital to that film thematically as well, leading to those Kelson sequences at the end that are so emotionally engrossing, as you were just talking about. And I do love how that is embedded in this idea of Spike, not so much wrestling with grief as much as it's about remembrance and embracing the grieving process. I love how Danny Boyle goes about depicting that in the film, all while subtly in this incredible way, it's acting as this rebuke of nationalism, which I do think is it's not quite as vital as those emotional themes, but I do love that it's there, because the first two movies, that's a lot of what this whole franchise is built on. So like it is the nucleus of the 28 years, weeks, days later movies. So maintaining that, especially with the Boots poem we get, which when you dive into the context of that and Spike being this young boy brought up in this environment, a lot of that I think makes a ton of sense. So I think it's actually quite smart. It's sophisticated. For me, this was my winner for best adapted screenplay. I think it's Alex Garland's best, or one of his very best. He's a great writer in general. But yeah, this was my winner for best adapted screenplay. I had Danny Boyle in my nominees for best director as well. It had one of the best scores of last year. I just think it's, like I said, it's a masterpiece. I could go on and on. But I wanted to reiterate that here up front, because in many ways that will play into my thoughts here on The Bone Temple. But I deeply love that film. Like I said, my number 2 of 2025. I love it a lot.
That's great. I love that you love that so much. And one of the things that struck me about what you were talking about as far as the cinematography goes and why it wasn't shortlisted, I'm not surprised, because horror doesn't get the love and the appreciation.
Well, and that's the real answer, right?
Yeah, right. Because it is a gorgeous looking film. It really is. And it is so striking. And I mean, cinematography isn't just about what looks beautiful, of course, because there are such visceral, gross moments, like you said, but there are just stunning sequences and just visually striking. And it's because horror doesn't get the appreciation, sadly.
And I do think there's a lot that is distinctive about it. Again, I don't know if I've seen this before. I'm sure there are some movies out there that may dabble into the kind of imagery we see in that film, but I do love that combination, especially in that final act, of the grotesque and the beauty. That whole vestige that is built by the Dr. Kelson character, and how that has such a huge role into what we see as we see this incredible moment of saying goodbye and the grieving process of Spike and everything that goes on there. It's so deeply beautiful. And yet in the middle of all of that is this weird, grotesque imagery that it's just not a combination you see all that often. And I found it so gorgeous, and how it comes about in that movie. Again, I could go on and on. You're going to have to stop me. Otherwise, this will just end up being a review of that movie. And I guess the last thing I'll say to your point about horror and the Oscars, I think what's also disappointing about it is that you had a built-in excuse, because at horror, more than any other year, is actually having a great interaction, I guess, with award season, right? Because Sinners is all over the place. It's going to be nominated for 7-8 Oscars.
I hope
come later this week. And then also Amy Madigan is going to be nominated for Best Supporting Actress.
Yes. Rightfully so.
And let alone, and weapons may surprise in other categories as well, but that one is virtually guaranteed. So horror actually is having an impact on award season in a way we just normally don't see, to your point. Right. So in momentum with that, it felt like this would have been a great year to just embrace horror more widely, I guess. But they didn't. They didn't.
No, not a surprise, sadly.
Yes. All right. Let's go ahead and transition to 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Again, directed by Nia DaCosta and written by Alex Garland. That's worth noting here as well. It stars Ray Fiennes, Jack O'Connell, Alfie Williams, Aaron Kellyman, Chai Lewis Perry, and a bunch of others that come and go throughout the film. If you're not familiar with The Bone Temple, as Spike is introduced into Jimmy Crystal's gang on the mainland, Dr. Kelson makes a discovery that could alter the world. Okay, let's jump into this. Megan, what did you think about The Bone Temple?
Well, I said this was one of my most anticipated of the year, and I don't like being hyperbolic and making such bold claims in January when there are hundreds of films that are still yet to release. But
Megan's top 10 movie of the year, right here.
Top 10. I know. This was incredible. I didn't read any reviews before seeing this, but I had heard murmurs of how good this was, and my expectations were high. So I was like, I gotta control myself before watching. This is so good. This is excellent. This is, I think, expertly directed, incredibly well acted. I mean, Ray Fiennes is always phenomenal, always. But he is, I feel like, on another level here. So good. Everybody is giving such a complex performance. It's great to see Jack O'Connell here after Sinners and playing another incredibly terrifying villain. And so the acting is great. The direction is great. The score is incredible. The imagery is, again, you have that juxtaposition between beauty and art and these tender moments of joy alongside some horrific torture and violence and just brutality. And I think this is such an emotional and riveting exploration of the capacity for kindness and compassion and the utter depravity and cruelty of some people, and just those polar opposites. And it feels like a lesser film that could have felt very formulaic, trope-filled, trite. And I think here it is masterfully done, and how it vacillates between kindness and just utter nihilism and cruelty and just viciousness. And I'm so excited to talk about this and dive in because I think this is an incredible film. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Last year at this time, I had no idea I'd become a massive fan of this franchise, but here we are.
Yay!
Here we are. I really liked The Bone Temple a lot as well. Now, to get this out of the way, because I do want to spend the bulk of this conversation on the film itself, but comparison is inevitable. I do prefer the tender, more sophisticated nuances of 28 Years Later, as I just talked about. It was my number 2 movie of last year, and I think it's one of the best films of the decade so far. I don't think this reaches the same heights as last year's 28 Years Later, primarily because I think the Jimmy stuff is a little reductive and a bit disjointed after his extraordinary and emotional arc in last year's film. Spike, I do think, is a little bit of an afterthought through most of this film, at least until we get to the third act when he is more of the focus again. I do really love the relationship between Spike and Kelly. Their dynamic is wonderful and a touching contrast to what he just experienced with the death of his mother, as we saw in last year's film, as Kelly morphs into an older sister type. I just wish that was woven into the narrative a little bit more seamlessly and given more weight. As much as I love the idea, its execution leaves a little to be desired for me, and it doesn't quite have the emotional impact it was going for. Now, that said, where this film absolutely thrives is in its depiction of Dr. Kelson and Samson. The qualitative pathos of that relationship here left me pretty floored. And I love how it's almost the anti-Frankenstein in the sense that you have a doctor who wants to awaken the dead, but not out of ego and scientific experimentation. Instead, it's born out of love and empathy and wanting to heal the world. I found that really, really fascinating. It's a zombie movie that's more interested in life and rediscovery and looking at zombieism as a condition that can be treated. Again, much like last year with 28 years later, that's something that I don't know if I've seen before, at least not in this specific way. And not enough can be said about Ralph Fiennes and Shia Lewis Perry. I agree with you. Both of their performances here are sensational. I loved how internalized they are, how emotional they are, at least until we get to the very end of the film, but we'll talk about that later. But through most of the film, I do love that emotional, methodic approach to their performances. That their dynamic here, again, it's absolutely tantalizing. I get why everyone is going crazy over that scene near the end of the film, but the best scenes in this film for me are those tender moments with Samson and Kelson. I'm thinking about them dancing together there in the sunlight, or the hand in the rain, the train scene, and of course the moon moment. I think is phenomenal. Like I love those sequences here. That to me is when this film is absolutely at its best. And again, certainly more than enough for me to really love this film on the whole. And I do want to give some context. I'll reiterate maybe some of my criticisms as this film goes, but to give context to that, I still give this film a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I'm like, those criticisms are not weighing down this film all that much. It's just the difference between this film and how I feel about last year's film, or even that first 28 days later. This probably sits at number 3 for me as far as a ranking goes. But again, I don't want to get too bogged down in that because the disparity isn't that much. I just offer those criticisms to say that that's the difference for me. But I love this film for the most part. And I'm excited to dive further into why it is so great.
Yeah, I love everything you're saying. I think zombie films are really fascinating because throughout the years, they really often explore more about humanity, of course. Humans are often the villain rather than the zombies, and zombies can be a stand-in and symbol for a variety of social injustices and ills. And I love how you said it's kind of an anti-Frankenstein because you're right. It is so often we see scientists as so ego-driven, and here Dr. Ian is so benevolent and so kind, and we see it in the previous film where he just wants to help Isla and just put her at peace and put her out of her pain, and that's exactly what he wants to do with Samson as well. And he sees the calm and the joy and the kind of zen, and is really thoughtful and inquisitive about him when he's asking, what do you think about, and do you have repressed memories, and are you just happy to be at peace? And it's really beautiful. Like their scenes are just incredible. I completely agree with you. I will say that there are many other zombie films and zombie TV shows and video games that have explored kind of some of these issues and some of these moments that this film is, and 28 years later is diving into. Like I also think of Romero's Day of the Dead, which also looks at zombies as not being mindless, but being much more thoughtful and aware of their existence and surroundings than people think. And so I love that this is kind of taking that mantle and taking what's come before, whether it's in The Last of Us or Walking Dead or Day of the Dead and other zombie films and stories, and is kind of exploring that. So I think that that's great. It is kind of interesting to think about Jimmy Crystal, and does that character lack nuance? Is it just so one note and evil? And maybe but it's funny because I couldn't help but think about kind of the cult of personality and the religious cult of it all. And it very much reminds me of the book Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, which is not a zombie novel, but it is a post-apocalyptic novel looking at the importance of art and community in the wake of devastation. And there is a character who's very much like Jimmy Crystal and has like a cult of children around him and supporting him. And so I don't know, maybe because I love that book so much and kind of saw parallels with this story, I didn't see it as one dimensional. But I can totally see why it didn't work completely for you. But yeah, but I thought it was, I don't want to say a necessary counter, but I think there is something important about showing that extremity in his portrayal that is very much what this film is showing and diving into.
Yeah. No, I mean, I do agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think for me, it simply comes down to execution and editing and weaving all of this together. I think that's why it's ultimately a little reductive for me. I don't think it's ever tried. I think it's maybe channeling energy or ideas that we've seen before, for sure. It's doing it in an interesting way. Again, that's what I love about 28 Years Later as well. There's been a million movies about grief, especially in the horror genre. I just feel like the way Danny Boyle's film tackles it, it's done in a unique and distinctive way. And I think this film is mostly there as well. I just think it stumbles in weaving some of that together. But one thing that you said that I do find really, really fascinating here, there's this great juxtaposition between Sir Lord Jimmy, shall we call him, and Dr. Kelson. I think what's fascinating about Jimmy is that, and I guess this tailors to your point about how complex the character is, he's basically the exact same as Spike in terms of maturity. And I don't say that pointedly, but rather heartbreakingly.
Yeah.
There's something poignant about his stunted adolescent mindset because, like Spike, he saw his family murdered and was forced to survive on his own as a child. And it is saddening how that comes through here underneath the veneer of Jack O'Connell's bombastic performance. For example, that moment early on when he references Teletubbies and Jimmy Savile, it's very reminiscent, very indicative of his childlike mentality. And maybe even more revealing is that first interaction he has with Kelson, where he is genuinely uncertain if Kelson is old Nick. There is a palpable sigh of relief when he realizes that Kelson is just another man.
Yes.
And I think it's an incredible moment that denotes just how much he loved his father and how desperate he is to see him again. That he's completely channeled that desire into this Satanist mythology, something that maybe just started out as a coping mechanism, but now it's become an ethos he fully buys into in the same way that a child believes in Santa Claus. I think it's born from the same childlike innocence. It's just obviously more depraved here. And for Dr. Kelson, as we have already talked about, and we certainly mentioned it last year in our review of 28 Years Later, his entire ethos is born out of remembering the dead and showing reverence to life, which of course manifested with his skull ossuary. And I love how in this film it goes a step further to study zombieism as a symptom of something bigger and trying to liberate the human underneath the zombie skin. So at the nucleus of this film, I do love what Garland is going for here in terms of exploring humanity versus brutality as a response to tragedy and how people create meaning by forming new belief systems in a world that is seemingly godless. I do love that here. Again, I think it's mostly effective. I just think the execution stumbles at times. But I do love those complexities here. And I did find how the film goes about examining those quite distinctive, even if they're certainly coming from other films, TV shows that Garland was clearly inspired by, for sure. The Last of Us, I have seen in 1,000 reviews that Garland clearly loves that.
It's hard not to see that. Yeah, the parallel.
for sure. But again, I just love how he's channeling it in his, through his own eyes, within the context of what makes this franchise what it is.
Absolutely. I mean, he was inspired by Romero and other zombie films to do 28 Days Later right from the start.
Yeah.
Because he was like, I used to watch zombie films. Where are zombie films? Where have they gone? I'm going to write a zombie film, even though he said it was not a zombie film for a very long time, but then finally said, no, actually it is a zombie film. So glad he finally said that. So no, I think you're right about that. The one thing I will say about, I think you're spot on talking about Jimmy's stunted and arrested development, and how he is so immature and still so stuck in that, especially because he grew up in the apocalypse, and the detriment to one's development at that time, at such a formative time, must have been just so brutal and disheartening. But what I find really fascinating, it also in light of that, is it doesn't feel that, while that is a way that you can sympathize with him and understand him, I love that it doesn't make excuses for his cruelty and for his violence and his manipulations. And I feel like I think there are a couple, but if there's a thesis to the film, which not that there has to be, but if there is one, I love the scene between Dr. Ian and Spike when he realizes that it's Spike and he takes his mask off, and then he's like, I've got one more commandment for you. And Spike says to him, why didn't you let us go? You could have survived. You would have been fine. And he says to him, he's like, you'd already had enough terrible things happen to you. I couldn't let that happen. And it was just the choice that he makes to be there for Spike and to help him to break this cycle of violence is just incredible. And so I feel like it's showcasing that kindness is a choice. And even if it does come naturally or innately, it's still a choice nonetheless. And that's vital. And I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I agree as well, because I do think there is a reading of this film where much of it is about how humans are more dangerous than the infected. But I do think it is more than just that. Even if most of the death and carnage in this film are caused by the Jimmies, that is very much true. We don't see much of... I don't know if we see any. I guess there's one moment of violence where the zombies have their way. Two, if you include the first moment with Samson that we see. But most of the death and carnage here is caused by the Jimmies. But I do think it's more complex than that. I do really love, again, that idea of lost innocence. It certainly brings a complexity to Jimmy Crystal, even if it doesn't make excuses. But I think it very much points back to the choices that you can make in a world that is ultimately godless. And I think that is maybe what Garland is trying to say at the end of this. But I think I love how that's funneled through this idea of belief systems and creating your new belief systems. And I think that's what tailors exactly to what you're just saying. I mean, if you're Jimmy Crystal and you see your family murdered and your father was seemingly a psychopath anyway, given the opening scene of Danny Boyle's film last year, you can see how Jimmy would grow up to be this way. And I do love that Jack O'Connell fosters that innocence. Even though the performance on the surface, it feels like it's almost caricature-ish. It's certainly over the top. It's bombastic. It's loud. It's fun. But I do think he taps into that innocence in this really incredible way that at least makes sense of why he's this way. And I think it's simply born out of he wants to see his father again. And I find that so fascinating. But on the flip side of that is Dr. Kelson, who had every right to be as nihilistic, and he just doesn't choose that. He chooses love and life and remembrance. And for that to crystallize the way it does with that moment with Spike, as you're talking about, I do love that a lot as well. Again, if anything, I don't know if it hit me as emotionally as it might have for you and others, because I feel like Spike gets a little bit lost here at times in the first half of the film. So, again, that's the only thing that keeps me from fully loving this, like last year's film or even 28 Days Later. But it's certainly there enough, especially in the performances. Ray Fiennes is just stupendous here. He's on another level. He's unreal here. And I love that character so much. It's one of my very favorite characters he's maybe ever done. And coming, and especially that moment coming off what we had just witnessed in terms of his performance, his theatrical in context of the film performance, we'll talk about. But that interaction with Spike coming off the heels of that to kind of like laying down the facade of the deal, but using it to his advantage to have this one last act to save Spike and perhaps the other Jimmys there as well. It certainly speaks a lot to the belief systems that you can foster, and that ultimately, as a human, we have choices to make, whether it's the apocalypse or not.
Mm-hmm. So I've been thinking about this while you're talking about Spike and kind of his sidelining. And I think it's a necessary, I can totally see why it's frustrating. I think it's kind of a necessary component, because thinking about it thematically, thinking about it as kind of a parallel or mirror to Jimmy, because his mother just died. And so he has that trauma that he's dealing with. And then he immediately goes from that and for a month kind of wandering the countryside and then getting scooped up into this cult. And he's witnessing these horrific things that they're doing, just torturing people for no reason whatsoever. And I feel that kind of seeing him stymied because he's so shocked and horrified and appalled at what's going on. So to me, it kind of makes sense that he would be sidelined in a way, just because he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to react. And then there's that horrific scene. It's so heartbreaking where the redheaded woman gets away and then he's like, take me with you. And it's so horrible. And it's so sad because he's done all these things and he's been on these quests and he can clearly take care of himself, but he's just a little kid.
He's
and
still a child.
He's still a little kid and he just lost his mom. And it's so sad. And so I love what you also said, because I feel like that ties into his relationship with Kelly. And Erin Kellyman is so great in this role.
Incredible.
She is incredible.
Really,
and
really good.
I loved her in Eleanor the Great. And I think she's exceptional here. The way she has an electric danger to her that is, you don't know what she's going to do, what she's going to say. And there's something about the not knowing her, that she feels unstable in a way, and but still is kind-hearted, like she's kind to Spike and is trying to look out for him. That I find that utterly intoxicating, just how she is and how she portrays that.
And I agree. I think what's interesting, perhaps there's an uncertainty to her as you're talking about, but she's clearly formidable.
Yes.
As someone who can survive in this world, which does offer a little bit of danger to her or tension to the character. And again, as I noted earlier, I do love that dynamic between Spike and Kelly, because it is an interesting transition going from the death of your mom to forming this relationship, and it fosters this like older sibling kind of dynamic that is really great, even if it takes a moment to get there. But to your point, as far as Spike being in the background, and I did think about this earlier, actually, I think maybe my biggest issue with this film is less so what it's doing on its own terms and the fact that it's a bit of a bridge movie. I had these same issues with Avatar Fire and Ash as well. This is clearly part 2 of a new trilogy. Even more broadly, it's part 3 of a quintet, if we're removing 28 Weeks Later out of the equation.
Why would we remove that?
Look, for some people,
That's fair.
not for everybody.
I mean, it's the weakest. I get it.
It is the weakest. And look, while it may play very well in that context, maybe it's a bit underserved on its own terms. Again, kudos to DaCosta and Boyle and Garland for mostly overcoming that, as I do think this film is still quite compelling. It is great as this transitory act. I just, maybe where it falters for me is within the larger quintet storytelling. I think that's ultimately what it is. And that is that's kind of how I felt about Fire and Ash. I think Fire and Ash is a lot of fun. I think it is very much, hey, let's just repeat the last movie so we can get to the next one where we're going to blow things up and it's going to be very different. But it has fun along the way because it's Goat Cameron and the spectacle is incredible. I think this is a lot of that where you can clearly see the mechanics of it setting up other things to where it's going to pay off in the next film. And that is even more indicative of the coda that we see here. And maybe we can get to that here in a moment as well. Ooh. So it's clearly patching all of these things together where it's a sequel to Danny Boyle's film. It's a sequel to the franchise at large, but we're also setting up things for the next movie as well, while trying to be our own movie. I honestly think that's maybe my biggest issue with it. I think when it's all said and done and we have all 5, 6 films or however they make, this is probably going to be one of those films I go back to in hindsight, and all of those issues will just be non-factors for me once it's all said and done. That's likely where this is headed, but I don't know where it's all going at the moment. So that's all conjecture. But I am hoping that it just kind of plays out though. I just feel like it's just a side effect of the function of this act, being within this larger storytelling, wheel at the moment. But I do think Spike, I think there's absolutely a lot of merit to him just like reacting to what he's seeing. And while it's a little frustrating for me, given what we saw in 28 Years Later, I think that reacting is ultimately what serves him in the end with his relationship with Kelly. So like it's a bit of a double-edged sword. And while, again, I think in years to come, hopefully not 28 years, but hopefully in years to come, I'll certainly come around on the movie. I think I will.
Yeah, no,
or that part of it. Obviously, yeah. I love it, but that
no, totally. No, and I know that I don't want to say you're nitpicking because I don't think you are, but no, I don't think any of your critiques are detracting from your enjoyment and love of this film. It is funny though, because I know it is a bridge film, and so that is obviously hard to separate that, knowing that going in. I do wonder though, because I think this is still very much its own film. I wonder if you had never seen any of the other 28 Years Later films, if you would still feel that way, or if you just watched this one in a self-contained way, what your reaction would be. Because it's hard to obviously go back in time and, because can't do that because I've already seen, the other preceding films, but I do wonder, what.
Yeah, it's an interesting exercise.
Yeah.
Because obviously coming off the heels of 28 Years Later, my emotional attachment is with Spike. At the beginning of this film, that's where my heart lies.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's not mine.
But if you come into this clean, you're not going to have any sort of attachment, and you might just be drawn to Dr. Ian Kelson.
Yeah.
But I loved, 28 Years Later is a coming of age movie, and I am very much drawn to those movies. So my heart very much lies with him. That image of him putting, spoiler alerts, I guess, for 28 years, but putting his mom's skull on the top of the vestige, that is
heartbreaking.
It's an image that will stick with me for a long, 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 long time. I deeply love it. So I was very much invested and that character. I think Affie Williams gives one of the best child performances of the last 10 years as well.
So good.
So coming into this film and off the heels of that, I was deeply excited to see where his character goes. And throughout the first half of the film, it feels like he's just in the background, and purposefully so. So I'm trying to differentiate between what the film is doing and what I was hoping it would do, because I'm not here to criticize the film for it not acting on my wishes.
Right.
But that's where I wonder if a rewatch will help kind of remedy some of this for me. Because like I just feel like, again, maybe it's more of an execution thing, not a, the writing from Garland, the philosophy behind it, I think is like, I can understand what it's trying to do, and I admire what it's trying to do. I just wonder about the execution, because the Jimmy stuff didn't always work for me. I just found it a little reductive, but the Samson stuff, which we haven't even really gone into a whole lot here.
Yeah, you're right.
Is just like that's what I love. Like, that's just my cup of tea, big time. As quiet and still and tender as it is, like to try to get underneath the veneer of that zombie skin and to treat it the way that Kelson does here, again, in that anti-Frankenstein type way, I think is just incredible here. That train scene might be my favorite of the movie.
Ooh.
I deeply love it. I don't have a ticket gave me chills. And just him walking out just blood soaked, as if, and again, if we're going to be going to religious parallels or symbols or phrasing, like it felt like he was born again after that. And given the parallels, like it was a baptism of sorts.
Yes.
And then how that tailors to the final scene of the film and the imagery we get there with the Antichrist symbolism.
Yes.
Again, that's incredible. Again, like you can throw my criticisms to the side if you want to. Like, I love the film. Like, there's a lot to love here.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad that you said that, because I was thinking about this while we've been talking, that there is absolutely a birth rebirth, and there is for Samson, and there is so much religiosity and mythology, like Greek mythology, woven into the fabric of this through the dialogue, through the imagery. And you're absolutely right. I hadn't even thought of Samson being reborn, because what I had thought was Spike being reborn, because it's very much on, and there's of course valid criticisms of the hero's journey kind of cycle and steps of it. But one of the steps is going into the abyss and having a death, either literal or metaphorical, and then being reborn. And I feel very much that that's what Spike undergoes, is kind of the abyss of humanity and of evil and depravity. And then when he and Kelly take off their wigs, it's kind of like, shedding that identity and then being reborn and leaving. But you're absolutely right. Samson is very much, he's baptized in blood. He is exiting the womb of the train window.
Which is that. And I love that phrasing too, given 28 years later, and that whole pregnant sequence, which I think is phenomenal. Yeah.
Oh, that, and I will say I have not seen it often, but I have seen zombie pregnancies before.
Okay.
But I've never seen it like that. I've never seen it where you have like the way you have Isla holding on to that zombie woman and they're like in sync with each other. It's a beautiful moment, and that I've never seen. And so that was incredible. But yeah, no, I love this. And so I very much think these cycles of descending into hell, and Jimmy at one point talks about going to the seventh circle of hell, very Dante esque. And I love that. I love that we're exploring the themes of religion and of death and rebirth, and it's so good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Again, that's why, like, my small gripes with this film, I think, will be meaningless by the end of the year, and especially as this franchise continues to go. I do want to reiterate, I really loved it. And I do think there's a lot to Like it like there's more nuances to it than maybe it sounds like I gave it credit for earlier, but I do love that like those religious parallels and again those sophistications with Jimmy as we talked about earlier. Because one thing you said about Jimmy some moments ago, I think you were talking about Jimmy. Forgive me if I'm misquoting you
No
here,
worries.
but you were talking about the Jimmys and some of the violence they do. And I believe you said they were doing it for no reason. And where I would push back against that is that I do think there's a reason for it.
No, you're absolutely right. There is a reason. Yeah.
And it all comes back to him trying to communicate with his dad. Like he wants to get to his dad, which he equates to old Nick, but really he just wants to see his father again, even though he probably knows that he's died, that he's dead. But there's just this hope that maybe I'll come across them again, or that he'll be, reborn as old Nick or as this Satan figure. And that's where that violence is coming from. And it is quite abrasive for sure. It's daunting to see. But again, I think that's what I love about Alex Garland's writing in these last two films. Like everything he does comes with assiduous purpose. And there's certainly a reason for it. And then Boyle and now DaCosta have done such a great job with their direction of bringing that to life in these incredible ways that I find so stimulating and fervent. And it comes alive. Like it breathes with this emotion that is great. And I love that both of these movies, they're not afraid to slow down.
Yes.
They're not afraid to pause. They're not afraid to be methodical and internalized. They don't always hold your hand, even though I don't think the themes in either film are all that hidden. Like,
No.
It's not ambiguous. Like it flashes out at you, but it is done in a quiet, meditative way that I do really love about both of these movies.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right. And the quiet, you said it before, and I think it's important. The quiet moments, especially with Samson, especially with, Dr. Hilson and Samson together, are some of the best
so
moments, if
good.
not the best moments.
Yeah.
I know. Like the scenes where Samson is walking through the woods and he picks berries and he's just feeling the breeze and he can actually appreciate the breeze. He's not just filled with rage.
Yeah.
It's incredibly moving. It's beautiful.
Like that when he sticks out his hand as it starts to rain, and you get that great shot there. Phenomenal. Or even when he's by the water and he's just, he's feeling the water in his hands. Like you can see that humanity start to creep back into him. And I just love how the film is deconstructing the idea of what zombieism is in that regard, trying to find the humanity underneath their brutality. Very tender, very warm, very moving. Should we talk about the crazy ass sequence that takes place at the end of this movie?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because we see Ray Fiennes go from tender, loving, moving Dr. Ian Kelson to just nightmarish in the best way possible. It is unbelievable what we see take place there. What did you think?
I mean, the funny thing is that, we've been kind of focusing on these quiet moments, these slow down moments. And I think about earlier, and we haven't even talked about this, the barn sequence, the barn burning sequence is such a riveting sequence too. But then you have this sequence where I love that he's like, okay, we're going to do this, putting on Iron Maiden. And he clearly has like makeup on and he's doing this whole dance performance and sequence. And I feel that Ray Fiennes is once again taking this to another level. He is an incredible actor. I mean, there's no denying that. He is chameleonic. He can do any genre. He can do anything. And he puts himself fully into it and kind of surrenders to the role. And I love that he does that here in a way I've never seen him. And it's such a surprising scene. It's weird. It's funny. And it's kind of terrifying because you don't know how Jimmy Crystal's going to react to it. And it's great. I love it. I'm dying to know what you thought of it.
No, I thought it was incredible as well. Again, I much prefer the tender warm moments here because that's the heart of this movie. But this is an incredible juxtaposition to that, though, where he channels an energy we haven't seen from that character at all. And the fact that it's this fully committed performance, it's almost unnerving how fully committed it is.
Yeah.
But to something we said earlier, the character needs to be fully committed because the film then subverts that with that interaction with Spike.
Yes.
And so again, there's clear intentionality behind what it's doing, and Ralph Fiennes fully goes for it. Mm-hmm. And it is incredible to watch. Tantalizing, the whole thing. The needle drop, the direction, the camera work there. It is choreographed perfectly. And it's a lot of fun. Not something that you certainly don't anticipate. I don't know if it lived up to the hype that social media made it to be there, because a lot of people were like, "You're not ready for this," and I guess to a degree that is correct. But I think what I love about it is, again, how it ultimately subverts itself in the end.
Yes.
And how it, again, circles back to what we do love about that character.
Yeah.
It's great. No, it is a lot of fun.
I agree.
A lot of fun.
You know, this is a weird aside, but I think it fits very much with this. One of the best Ralph Fiennes moments I ever saw was when he did a reading of a Real Housewife of Salt Lake City going off on a tirade, and it was the most committed performance I've ever seen, and it's hilarious. And so I was like, Ralph Fiennes can do anything, so not a surprise, but still a delight nonetheless.
Very funny. Just underratedly one of the better comedic actors working.
Yes, weirdly so. Yes,
he nailed it. He absolutely nailed it. And credit to Nia DaCosta too, because tonally there are huge swings there. And I don't feel like it's ever out of bounds. Mm-hmm. It does work seamlessly together. And in the hands of a lesser director, that could have been a big tonal failure. But she keeps that film together in a really great way. So that sequence, it is great on its own terms. It's obviously vibrant and energetic and fiery, I guess is maybe the best way to articulate it. But it seamlessly bleeds to everything else that takes place there, and works concurrently with the rest of the movie. So certainly kudos to her direction in that regard as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you know she almost didn't take this job as director of this, which is just wild. And Jonathan Glazer told her, "You should do it," and she did. So,
and you listen to Jonathan Glazer.
You listen to Jonathan Glazer, but I love that because she's like, I don't know if I should step into this franchise. I love it, but I don't know. And he's like, do you love the script? And she's like, yeah, it's an incredible script. He's like, then you got to do it. And I love that.
Which is also like that in itself is hilarious because Nia DaCosta and Jonathan Glazer are not alike at all in terms of their filmmaking. So like those two being a pairing at all in this conversation is very funny to me.
I know. I love it.
But good on him for pushing her to do this because she nailed it.
Yes.
Do you think this is her best film? Do you like this more than Hedda?
Ooh.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. It's a good question. I'm someone who tends to need time to let things kind of marinate. Mm-hmm. And so because I saw this so recently, I don't know if I can say yes or no. I don't think at this juncture, no. Like if I had to say on the spot, I'd say no. I love Hedda more. And Hedda also feels more like hers, even though, and I know that's a weird thing to say because it's an Ibsen play, but it feels very much more like hers, whereas this is hers, but also fitting into an existing story. But
Garland and Boyle are all over this still.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Although I do love that her addition to this was to have more infected in the film. She's like, you need more infected, Alex Garland, and so we put more in. But no, you're absolutely right. So, but so for me, I think I love Hedda more, but it's close. It's close. This is excellent. So
yeah, at this point, I'm with you. I do prefer Hedda slightly, but again, on a rewatch, as time goes on, those criticisms that I mentioned earlier certainly could diminish more and more, and even more, especially once we get to the other films and we see how it plays out. Everything we see here might make perfect sense in context of the larger storytelling that they're doing. And with that, like I'm still okay with that. It's like when the MCU was doing great, they're far from that. We're far removed from the goodness of the MCU at this point. But when they were at their best, I feel like that's where they were able to have their cake and eat it too. A lot of their films singularly worked fine, but in the larger context of everything, they worked even better. And this could very much be that, for sure. But I need time. Like I need time to kind of, I guess, demonstrate that for me. Either way, it's still a very, very good film. I do really enjoy it a lot. But again, of the two, I think Hedda is her best work as of right now. And that film's great. I urge everyone to go and see that if they haven't.
So
really
good.
Fantastic. I think Hedda gives us the best villain character in a movie since Lady Susan in Love and Friendship.
Oh, yeah, definitely a complex villain. Absolutely.
Two of the most underrated villains in recent movie history.
Hedda is so underrated. No, you're absolutely right. No, people don't talk about Love and Friendship enough in general. But yeah, people are not talking enough about Hedda. It kind of blows my mind that it's not. It deserves way more praise. It does. Way more love.
I agree. Very, very good movie. Either way, this is a great way to start 2026.
Yes.
Although this was technically number 2 for me, I did see The Rip first, but number 2. This was my number 2 so far. Good way to start the year, and our first review of 2026, which was very fun. So thanks, Megan, for being here. Do you have any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Ooh, I would say that this is coming on the heels of We Bury the Dead, which is Daisy Ridley, another zombie film that is
I need exploring. To see that still.
You do. It's great. It's not as good as this. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but it's a compelling film nonetheless. Daisy Ridley is giving a fantastic performance, and it's also exploring grief, and it's also a different kind of zombie movie, and you may appreciate it because it's a slower zombie film. It's not about the thrills.
You're definitely selling it. For
sure. It's a good film. It's really good. But I kept thinking about that, especially because I just saw that like 2 weeks ago. So I kept thinking about that film while watching this. Like, this is on a much larger scale, dealing with many more characters and themes, but kind of has a similar core to it. But yeah, I just think this is incredible, and it is one of my favorites of the year already. So yeah, I have a couple favorites already. How is this year already producing such great films? It's incredible.
Yeah, definitely need to see We Bury the Dead. You very much sold it. And I will also add this. I think Daisy Ridley is on one at the moment. I think she's having a great last couple of years.
Yes.
I had her nominated at the In-Session Film Awards for Best Actress in 2024, I guess it was, for Sometimes I Think About Dying.
Yes.
One of the very best performances of that year. Hands down.
Yes, it was incredible.
Stunning. I thought she was very good in Magpie, really good in Young Women and the Sea as well. So yeah, I'm very much on the Daisy Ridley train at the moment. And
it's a good train to be on.
I would be excited for that film just for her alone, let alone all the other reasons you mentioned. So
yes.
Yeah, we'll check that out. As far as The Bone Temple is concerned, though, yeah, I mean, I do really like this film a lot. I think all the Kelson Sampson stuff works. I love the symbolism behind it all. I cannot emphasize enough the performances here as well. I mean, we've talked a little bit about Ray Fiennes. He's really great. Chai Lewis Perry as Samson also stunning.
So
Incredible. Incredible. I was thinking about this earlier too, because on the latest Chasing the Gold podcast, Shadon was talking about Jacob Elordi and how innovative she thought the performance was given the makeup of it all. And she was talking about how she thinks it's going to be a game changer in terms of what performances can look like with that amount of makeup on.
Mm-hmm.
And using that, I guess, as a jumping off point, I feel the same way about Samson in this film and Lewis Perry, like getting those two performances and how they're able to manifest these tender warmth nuances underneath all of that makeup and essentially acting as quote unquote creatures, if you will, that are dead and brought back to life. Those two performances, I think, have a lot in common, and they're really, really great. And I am glad Elordi is getting his awards recognition. It will be unfortunate that Lewis Perry won't, because this film came out in January, so it'll be long forgotten by the time we get to the fall. But I think it's very much in that conversation, though. Like, I do really love how we got both of those performances kind of echoing similar sensibilities as far as makeup work goes, creature work goes. Really good stuff. The score here, I think, is good as well. I slightly prefer the Young Father score from last year's 28 Days Later, but what we get here from, and I can never say her name, Hildur. I'm not even going to try. Hildur. When I say Hildur, we all know who you're talking about.
Gudna Dortier.
God.
I know, it's a tricky one.
No way, I could never get it.
But she's an incredible composer.
Yeah,
love her
good.
work. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, man, those Icelandic names, they're really tricky for my dumb American brain. But Hildur, really good. I do really like it. Like what she brings here is still very good. And I guess the last thing, and I know we've already mentioned some spoilers for this film, but I do want to talk about the coda here real quick.
Yes.
What did you think about that coda and
Loved
the particular character that we saw pop up there?
Loved it. And it's so funny because I remember the marketing, and I don't usually pay attention to marketing. I don't watch trailers. I hate it. But I remember the marketing for 28 Years Later, and that zombie that is so skinny, and people thought for sure it was going to be a certain person, and it was not that person. And then we see them here, and can I say who it is?
Yeah, you can say.
Okay. I was like, people were convinced it was Cillian Murphy. It was not Cillian Murphy, but Cillian Murphy's here.
Yeah.
And we don't have the time, I feel like, or the space to talk about it, but Cillian Murphy, what an incredible actor also. And he's on screen for 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and makes the most of that scene. And again, a really beautiful, tender scene with his daughter where he's teaching her history and she's preparing for a history exam that he's going to give her.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that, especially when you think about 28 Years Later and then the Bone Temple together and this through line of parenthood and of parents either being there or not being there, or, being ripped away from your parent. And I love that we see him here. And I love that he's back, even if it's just this one scene. And it doesn't seem like it's going to be just this one scene, but even if it is, I love that. I love that it's connecting to the original film, which for me is still the best, just because it changed everything. It's so good.
Very good.
But I loved seeing Cillian Murphy. It was I wasn't surprised because I was like, this fits, this makes sense, but it was such a delight nonetheless. I adored it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. In the same way that I really like the coda in 28 Years Later as well, setting up this film with Jimmy as he embarks at the end of that film. And I don't know if Garland is trying to set something up as far as what the next one will be with Jim and his daughter, and how their seemingly normal life, as normal as one could have in the apocalypse, is going to be undermined. I am curious where that is going to go. Either way, as its own little short film. It's great. And seeing Cillian Murphy there, I did get a little giddy. I'm not gonna lie. That was fantastic. I love Cillian Murphy. He's had a great couple of last years as well.
Yes.
And I'm excited. I really hope that they make the next film. I think the box office for The Bone Temple has been not great. Although, to be perfectly honest, I haven't seen the numbers fully. So I don't know. I don't know if you know. But I hope it gets greenlit. Either way, we shall see.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't pay full attention to box office numbers, but from what I have read, they were expecting it to reach 20 to 25 million this weekend, and it hit like 13 or 14 million. So it underperformed. I think it is a crime that they released it in January, though. I think it is
I know.
just
They released it at the wrong time.
The wrong time. If they had released this in the summer, even early, like April, May, like early summer, like, because, you know, summer season starts in May for film. I think that would have been better. Even March. But they didn't listen to us.
I do see that it did get 15 million domestically. 13,
15.
I
Great.
guess,
Okay.
In its opening weekend, but 31.2 worldwide.
Oh, okay.
So
that's good.
I don't know if they're counting that as quote unquote opening the worldwide gross in that context that you brought up earlier. I do see the budget here was $63 million. So if this film is going to be profitable, it has a long way to go.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's going to get there. And since we're on the topic real quick, I know we're going a little bit long here. I wanted to look up. So 28 years later, so that did make 151 million worldwide. I don't know the budget, but I'm going to guess somewhat similar. I would imagine.
I would imagine that too.
So that one did so much better in terms of the start. But to your point, when did that film come out?
The summer.
In the summer.
Yeah.
That came out in the summer.
Yeah. And I also think you have the propulsion and the excitement around, oh my God, this, you know, we haven't seen one of these films in such a long time. So I think there's that. Whereas it just is coming after so soon, which is not a bad thing, but I think that's part of it too. So
yeah. Well, and
I think there are a few things against it. Yeah. But the big thing is when it's released. Yeah.
Yeah. Like when The Way of Water came out and it made like $15 billion. You know, that, and part of that is because we had to wait 13 years in between the movies.
Right.
And Fire and Ash didn't quite make that, even though it did go over the $1 billion mark, but it didn't quite do what The Way of Water did because it came out just a few years later. So like, I do think that built up anticipation, it helps. It very much does.
Yes.
But it also came out in the summer. I don't know why they did Nia DaCosta dirty like that.
So dirty.
It is very frustrating. I agree. I don't know what Sony was thinking there, but who knows? Fingers crossed. Maybe it'll be a slow burn, a slow, fiery, dancing burn.
That's what I hope. That's why we need longer release windows.
Yes.
Can't just have a movie out for 1 or 2 weeks and expect it to, you know, blow up the box office. That's not going to happen. Got to give the movies time.
Exactly. Yeah, Warner Brothers / Netflix. Oh my God. All right. Megan, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Blue Sky and Twitter at Opinion S World, or Instagram and Letterboxd at The Opinion S. You can also find me at Spoiler Piece Theater. And I'm often here, Women in Session, and
all over the place. We love it. Yeah, please go give Megan a follow. Check out all of her great work. Always love talking to you, Megan. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
As we wind down here, I just want to reiterate on last week's main show, it was the In Session Film Awards. As I mentioned up at the top of the show, it was like 7 hours of podcasting combined, but it was a ton of fun. So go and check that out. And then on this week's show, we are going to be doing our top 10 most anticipated of 2026. So you can be on the lookout for that. And Shadon will have Oscar nominations reaction. That is coming later this week as well. And Shadon and I, we're going to be doing a live stream on YouTube Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. where we just get silly talking about these Oscar nominations.
Oh,
Maybe I'll have a few drinks because that's how one talks about the Oscars. At least that's how I do it. It's
Very
the only
fancy.
way to cope with the inevitable disappointment. No, but we're gonna have fun talking about the Oscars. Be sure to join us on YouTube for that live stream. That's this Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern. Be sure to join us. All right. With all of that said, thanks, Megan, for joining me once again. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast.